The last time we left this story, Vegeta's pride had been somewhat wounded when he lost a fight to Goten, who had gotten a handle on Super Saiyan before he had. Bulma, seeing her new head of security struggling against a child, albeit a child like Goten, decided to try and help out. That, and she needed someone to help her test something. Vegeta would enter the lab, not really buying the idea that Bulma was capable of building something that would give him a challenge. Smart as she was, this planet was primitive. A human genius was still a human. Bulma would unveil a humanoid robot of some kind. Vegeta was immediately unsure what to make of it. This is my latest invention. I call it Boxer, a state-of-the-art battle droid programmed to learn from its opponents as it fights. If you intend to test it against me, I'm afraid I'll likely destroy it before it can learn anything from me. Well, if you're so sure about that, let's take this outside. I'm not having you fight in here. Vegeta would follow Bulma and her new creation outside, still not really taking it seriously. The Frieza Force used to have combat robots and they were no challenge for him, and he was far stronger now. There was no way some Earthling could build a better one on her first go, even if it was Bulma. Alright Boxer, activate sparring mode. The machine would respond to a command assuming a fighting stance. Vegeta, not really taking it seriously, would simply go to punch the robot, expecting to end it in one hit. To his surprise, the machine caught his fist. He'd tried to pull his hand away, but the machine's grip held fast. It pushed his hand back, bending his wrist the wrong way. It was forced to let go, however, when Vegeta shifted his weight and threw the robot over his shoulder. The machine clattered to the ground, but was soon back on its feet. This time it took the offensive, closing the distance between them quickly, hitting Vegeta in the face and following it up with a series of strikes. It wasn't giving Vegeta an inch, he didn't even have time to block it. The prince powered up to his full strength, which forced the robot back away. He'd follow this up with a volley of ki blast, but it only took a moment for the robot to map a safe path through the barrage, and once he was there, he'd elbow Vegeta in the stomach. This knocked the wind out of the prince. Before he could recover, the robot grabbed his hair and kneed him in the face. Vegeta would grit his teeth before firing a blast at the robot's midsection. This would knock the robot back as Vegeta took the offensive, throwing blow after blow towards the machine. Boxer would block most of the attacks as best it could, but Vegeta would break its guard before punching straight through the robot's chest plate. Oil and sparks would fly everywhere before it could try anything else. Vegeta would let loose another attack, blowing the robot to pieces. With that, he'd land, not paying much mind to Bulma's complaints that he destroyed the thing. Still, it had been decent training. Not bad, but it's still a ways off beating me. Bulma seemed to take that as a challenge. She'd build another one that could give him a challenge, maybe even beat him. He'd stay at Capsule Corp to train in the gravity chamber, with Bulma every now and then popping in with another robot for him to fight. He'd beat every one, of course, but they got progressively harder to fight. In fact, eventually, she made one that could beat him, the 13th model. He'd try for weeks, but every time he fell just short. It was much stronger now, and it knew how he fought. He felt useless. Kakarot was stronger than him, Mystery Future Girl was stronger than him, even Goten was stronger than him, and now he couldn't even beat this hunk of scrap. He became furious with himself for being so weak, and that was how he first turned Super Saiyan. When he finally managed to transform, he immediately destroyed the machine, though by now Bulma was used to this and was already planning the next one. Towards the end of the 3 years, he and Bulma have Bulla. Since Vegeta is around a little more this time, he does have sort of a bond with his daughter. Perhaps not as close as he probably should be, but he wasn't indifferent towards them, like in the original, and if they were in danger, he'd definitely help out. So, for now we'll go back to the rest of the group. When they meet up to fight the androids, Vegeta is still running late, but Bulma just assures them he'll show up sooner or later. But hey, Chaozu is here. Since Tien, Yamcha, Chaozu and Krillin all trained together, they're a decent amount stronger than they would be in the original. They knew the androids were supposed to arrive at 10 AM, but that time had come and gone with no sign of them. Goten would point out that they couldn't sense the key from Bulma's robot, so they probably couldn't sense the key from the androids either. So they'd have to search the city the old-fashioned way. Before they could, however, Yajirobe would show up to deliver some beans, only for his car to get destroyed by the androids, who then disappeared into the city. So everyone else would split up in order to search the city. As usual, Yamcha finds them first, but this time he doesn't immediately get grabbed by Jiro. He isn't strong enough to fight the guy either, but he just about avoids Jiro's attempt to grab a hold of him. He'd think fast and use the solar flare before firing an energy wave into the sky, alerting everyone to his location. He just had to evade attacks from the android until they got here. Since he wasn't striking back, he did manage, with some difficulty. He'd evade a strike from 20, but would stumble into an attack from 19. But before the android could clasp its hand around his neck, it was knocked away by a punch from Piccolo. Looks like I made it just in time. Jiro would do a quick head count. Goku, Goten, Piccolo, Tien, Krillin, Chaozu, Yamcha. 7 people, and Vegeta may show up later. Still, he wasn't too worried. Goku still suggests they take the fight away from the city, so they all leave, and when they were far enough away from the city, Goku takes on 19 like in the original. While he's initially winning, he does slowly start to lose. The heart virus was starting to affect him, and when it became clear he couldn't win, Goten would turn Super Saiyan and rush in, kicking 19 away from his father. Jiro would have stopped him, but he hadn't expected Goten to be able to do that, so he wasn't quite fast enough. Vegeta would simply land alongside the rest of the group. He was planning to get involved, but Goten had beat him to the punch. 19 would initially struggle to keep up with the young fighter. Chaozu would be chosen to take Goku home, so he'd leave the scene with Goku in tow. Goten ducked under 19's attempt to grab him and punched him in the stomach. He'd followed up with 2 more blows and a kick to the head, knocking the machine over. He'd try to finish it with an energy wave, but 19 simply absorbed it. Goten didn't really understand what had just happened other than ki attacks don't work, so he'd focus on physical attacks, but he'd get careless, and 19 managed to grab him, absorbing his energy. He'd struggle in its grip, but he felt himself getting weaker by the moment. This is when Vegeta decides to actually assist. He'd catch 19 off guard, breaking the arm holding Goten. It was still attached, but the mechanisms were busted. 19 couldn't even move it. Like in the original, Vegeta and 19 fight for a short while, with Vegeta pretty consistently holding the upper hand. After he destroys the machine, he turns on Android 20, and bluffs Jiro into running away before asking for a senzu bean and pursuing him. Vegeta followed him for a while, firing a ki blast into the crater, hoping to destroy potential hiding places. Jiro showed himself to absorb the blast before once again fleeing the scene. He'd then try to absorb energy from Piccolo like in the original. Goten knocks Jiro off Piccolo, and then they fight for a bit, with Piccolo holding a pretty dominant advantage. Midway through, Bulla arrives, pointing out how that's not one of the androids she knows. Piccolo accidentally refers to Bulla by name, and so the cat's out of the bag now. Bulma's plane would arrive not long after, and Jiro would attack it, but this time she has Boxer, who blocks the attack. Either way, Jiro took the opportunity to run, heading back to his lab. Vegeta followed, despite Bulla's attempt to dissuade him from doing so, but he didn't hit her. He simply pushed past her and took off after Jiro. Bulla went after him, and since she'd find out anyway, Piccolo just tells Bulma who that girl is and what she was doing here. Bulma's plane is intact, so she decides to go home by herself, bringing Yajirobe with her and sending Boxer off with the group to go after the androids. They'd split up to search the mountains for Jiro. They have extra support here in the form of Yamcha and Boxer. As usual, he attacks Krillin, who is a little stronger here but not strong enough to win. He'd evade the first strike from Jiro, just barely, before firing a Destructo Disc, which Jiro would destroy with his eye beams before kneeing Krillin in the stomach and throwing him to the ground. But of course, Krillin has the senzu bean, so he immediately recovers and finds Jiro's lab just as Jiro went inside. Everyone else arrives, and somehow they get walled by Jiro's insanely durable door long enough for Jiro to activate 17 and 18. The androids would quickly turn on Jiro after a brief argument about wanting to activate 16, and the group would get through the door just as 17 destroyed Jiro's head. Bulla would immediately destroy the lab like Trunks, however once she realized that 17 and 18 had survived, she'd try to destroy the capsule containing 16, only to be blocked by 18. What's the matter? Afraid of a fair fight? You outnumber us either way. 18 grabs Bulla by the wrist before kicking her in the stomach, sending her flying. She'd take off after Bulla as 17 activated 16. Vegeta was quick to pick a fight with 17, but 16 didn't seem at all interested in fighting them. Vegeta doesn't fare any better against 17 than he did against 18. If anything, he does ever so slightly worse. 17 and 18 are around the same strength, but 17 is just barely stronger. He didn't even remove his hand from his pockets, effortlessly weaving every attack from Vegeta. He'd lean back to evade a punch before kicking him in the face. Bulla was doing about as well as her father was. This didn't make any sense. Sure, the androids had always been stronger than her, but the gap had never been this wide. Normally she'd at least contend with them, but now she couldn't even land a hit. She'd swing her sword towards 18, who easily blocked it before breaking the blade in two. She'd then catch it between 2 fingers and throw it towards Bulla, who barely managed to dodge it. They'd split into teams. Goten, Tien, and Yamcha tried to help Vegeta fight 17, meanwhile Piccolo and Boxer tried to help Bulla against 18, with Krillin hanging back in case people needed healing. Or that's what he would have you believe. 18 would evade a punch from Piccolo, causing him to accidentally punch Boxer, which knocked the robot to the ground. Remember, Boxer is just a bit stronger than base form Vegeta, while Piccolo can contend with Super Saiyans, which means the attack came pretty close to knocking the robot's head off. 18 would then grab Piccolo's arm, flipping him over her shoulder before kicking him in the head, knocking him unconscious, and then she'd turn her attention back to Bulla. The others weren't doing much better against 17. He'd take Yamcha and Tien and smash their heads together before tossing them to the ground. He'd block an attack from Vegeta with just his wrist before kicking him in the chest and knocking him out with a punch to the back of the neck. He'd be taken by surprise from a hit from Goten that actually sort of hurt. Not a lot, but a little. Still, when he got his head in the game, he easily evaded every hit from the kid. Come on, kid, you can do a little better than this, can't you? He'd catch Goten's arm before throwing him to the mountain. He'd then follow it up with a punch to the stomach that left the boy unconscious. 18 finally got bored of Bulla. hitting her with an uppercut that left the girl unconscious. Bulla would hit the ground with a thud. Then the androids would simply leave to look for Goku. Krillin tries to convince them not to, but they don't listen. Still, he gets a kiss on the cheek from 18 for his trouble. He didn't let it distract him for long though, he'd get to work healing everyone. They split off like in the original. Vegeta flies off in a fit of rage, and Bulla follows. Goten, Yamcha, and Krillin would go to move Goku somewhere safer. Meanwhile, Piccolo would leave to try and talk to Kami. Tien was tasked with bringing Boxer to Capsule Corp for repairs. And that seems like a good place to stop for now. Even though they had more help, it didn't change the outcome. The androids are just too strong. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, that's fine, let me know why in the comments. I love reading comments. Like or subscribe if you want to, but that's up to you of course. Anyway, that's all from me. Take care.